Welcome to the Southwest Virginia Weekly Roundup, your source for all the latest news and happenings in our region. I'm Sarah, joined as always by meteorologist Mike and retired Detective Johnson. We've got a packed show for you today, covering everything from severe weather impacts to local politics and community events. Let's dive right in with our top story. Mike, can you give us an update on Hurricane Helene?
Absolutely, Sarah. Hurricane Helene has had a major impact on Southwest Virginia over the past few days. As of Saturday morning, over 177,000 people were still without power, especially in areas around Blacksburg, Floyd, Newcastle, and northeast Roanoke County. The New River was expected to crest at 27 feet, leading to significant flooding concerns. We've seen reports of downed trees and power lines across the region.
That sounds incredibly serious. Have there been any casualties reported?
Unfortunately, yes. There has been one confirmed death in Craig County related to the hurricane. Additionally, localities have reported other injuries, though we don't have exact numbers yet.
It's a stark reminder of just how dangerous these severe weather events can be. Residents really need to heed warnings and take proper precautions.
Absolutely. Mike, what areas are of highest concern right now?
The National Weather Service has warned of continued flash flood risks, particularly in the areas from southern Grayson County to Boone, North Carolina. Swift water rescue teams are on standby, preparing for potential flash flooding situations.
I know this has caused major disruptions. Many schools had closures or delays on Friday, correct?
That's right, Sarah. Most school districts across the region either closed completely or operated on a delay on Friday due to the dangerous conditions. It's not just schools either. Many businesses and government offices have also been affected.
Thank you for that update, Mike. We'll be sure to keep our listeners posted on any new developments with Hurricane Helene throughout the show. Now, let's turn to some of the other major stories from the past week. Detective Johnson, there have been several significant crime and law enforcement stories. Can you walk us through some of the key cases?
Certainly. Sarah, it's been a busy week on the crime beat. One of the most concerning cases involves a math teacher at Forest Park Academy who has been charged with child sex crimes. Kevin Lee Joyce is accused of inappropriate messages with minors. A search warrant affidavit indicates Joyce wrote about chatting with younger girls.
That's incredibly disturbing. What else can you tell us about this case?
At this point, the investigation is ongoing. But cases involving educators and minors are always taken extremely seriously. Parents and students in the Forest Park Academy community are understandably shaken. The school administration is cooperating fully with law enforcement.
I can only imagine. What other major cases have there been this week?
We've had a few other significant incidents. A hiker was found dead on the Carvin's Cove Trail system on Saturday. The individual had been reported missing 2 days earlier, and their car was found at a trailhead on Kessler Mill Road. In Salem, a woman has been charged with second-degree murder in a fatal shooting. And in Christiansburg, a man identified as Ronald Allen Troskowski, 32, was shot and killed by police.
That's quite a lot of serious incidents in just 1 week. Have there been any updates on older cases?
Yes, there have been a couple of notable developments. The Roanoke Commonwealth's attorney has ruled that an officer-involved shooting from June was justified. District Attorney Don Caldwell stated that the suspect appeared to have some sort of vendetta against law enforcement. Additionally, a woman named Farah Ciafardini, 28, was sentenced to 2 years for a fire in southeast Roanoke. During her testimony, Ciafardini spoke about her drug use on the day of the fire, and her attorney mentioned that she had learned to cook crack cocaine at the young age of 10.
Those are some deeply troubling situations. Thank you for that update, Detective. Now, let's shift gears a bit and look at some of the political developments in our region. One story that caught my eye involves Blacksburg Councilman Liam Watson. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, Councilman Watson is facing some serious allegations. A trial date has been set for his case involving election fraud charges. Watson is accused of listing multiple residences in his campaign filings. Interestingly, he had previously listed a church as his address while serving on the Planning Commission.
That's quite unusual. Are there any other notable political stories from the week?
Absolutely. Early voting for the November election has begun in Virginia, and most localities are showing an upswing in first-day early voting compared to 2020. Bedford and Bedford counties, in particular, saw more than double the number of first-day early voters.
That's encouraging to see such civic engagement. Any other political developments we should know about?
A few other items of note. The Christiansburg Council, in a split decision, agreed to contribute $400,908 to a regional commission office move. Roanoke City Council extended the contract of interim city manager Lydia Patton. And speaking of Roanoke, the city has once again approved some contentious zoning changes aimed at affordable housing. This came after a public hearing and a second key vote on residential zoning reform. Similar recommendations had passed 5-2 in March, but a citizen lawsuit caused the city to reconsider.
It sounds like there's a lot of movement on various fronts in local government. Now, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll be joined by Dr. Emily Chen to discuss some health and education news. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Southwest Virginia Weekly Roundup. We're joined now by Dr. Emily Chen, public health expert and professor at Virginia Tech. Dr. Chen, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Sarah. It's always a pleasure to discuss important health and education matters affecting our region.
Dr. Chen, one of the big stories in healthcare this week involves Carilion Clinic CEO Nancy Ag. Can you tell us more about that?
Certainly. This is actually a really inspiring story. Nancy Howell AG is celebrating a remarkable 50-year career at Carilion Clinic. What's particularly noteworthy is that she started as a registered nurse at the hospital shortly after being a teenage cancer patient there herself. Over the course of 5 decades, she rose through the ranks to become the CEO of this integrated health system.
That's an incredible journey. It must give her a unique perspective on patient care and hospital administration.
Absolutely. Having been on both sides as a patient and as a healthcare provider gives her invaluable insight. It's a testament to the potential for growth and leadership within the healthcare field. AG's experience as a patient has likely informed her approach to patient-centered care throughout her career.
Dr. Chen, if I may interject, there's another health-related story I'd like to get your perspective on. A study was recently released about harmful algal blooms at Smith Mountain Lake. As an environmental health issue, what can you tell us about this?
This is an important environmental and public health concern, Mike. The study, conducted by Princeton Hydro, provides details on the factors that led to last summer's algal blooms. These blooms can have serious impacts on both the ecosystem and human health. They can produce toxins that are harmful to humans and animals, and they can also lead to oxygen depletion in the water, affecting fish and other aquatic life.
That sounds serious. Are there any recommendations for residents or visitors to the lake?
The most important thing is to stay informed about any advisories or warnings issued by local health departments. During a bloom, it's crucial to avoid contact with the water, keep pets away from it, and certainly don't drink or use the water for cooking. Long term, addressing the root causes of these blooms, often related to nutrient runoff, will be key to preventing future occurrences.
Thank you for that insight, Dr. Chen. Before we let you go, I'd like to touch on some education news. The University of Virginia was recently named the No. 4 Best Public School in the country by certain rankings. As someone in higher education, what's your take on this?
Rankings like these can be a point of pride for institutions and their communities, but it's important to look beyond just the numbers. What's truly significant is the quality of education and research opportunities these institutions provide, as well as their impact on the local and global community. UVA has a long history of academic excellence, and this ranking reflects that. However, I always encourage prospective students to look at specific programs, faculty, and opportunities that align with their goals, rather than just overall rankings.
That's excellent advice, Dr. Chen. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your expertise.
It's been my pleasure, Sarah. Thank you for having me.
Now, let's turn to some business and community news. Mike, I understand there have been some interesting developments on that front.
Yes, Sarah. One story that caught my attention is about a locally owned company called Technista. They're planning to bring 15 new jobs to a training center in Pittsylvania County. It's always encouraging to see local businesses expanding and creating new opportunities in the region.
That's great news for the local economy. Any other business developments?
Well, in the realm of education and business, Radford University students are going to be investigating the redevelopment of a foundry site. This kind of hands-on, real-world project can be invaluable for students and potentially beneficial for the community as well.
Absolutely. It's great to see that kind of collaboration between universities and local development projects. Now, Detective Johnson, I believe you have some community news to share with us.
I do, Sarah. There's a heartwarming story out of Bedford County this week. A family there has finally been able to bury the remains of a World War II Marine who was killed on Guadalcanal. U.S. Marine Corps She. Morris Everett Kennedy's remains were laid to rest after all these years.
That's incredibly moving. It must mean so much to the family to finally have that closure.
Absolutely. These kinds of ceremonies are important not just for the families, but for our entire community. They help us remember the sacrifices made by our service members and connect us to our history.
Are there any other community events or stories you'd like to highlight?
A few things caught my eye. The Teed Up Against Cancer golf tournament raised funds for the 15th year. It was held on September 20th at Thorn Spring Golf Course. The New River Valley Home Builders Association held a community service event, launched by their Women in Building Committee on September 14th. And for the green thumbs out there, the Hahn Horticulture Garden has opened a new garden marquee pavilion. It's a 40-foot by 70-foot open-air timber frame structure that's available for events.
Those all sound like wonderful community initiatives. It's great to see so many different ways people are coming together to support causes and enjoy our region. Now, let's circle back to the Hurricane Helene situation. Mike, any updates on recovery efforts or additional warnings?
Yes, Sarah. The recovery process is underway, but it's going to be a long road. Utility companies are working around the clock to restore power, but some areas may be without electricity for several more days. The Virginia Department of Emergency Management is coordinating with local authorities to provide assistance where it's needed most. They're particularly focused on areas with severe flooding and structural damage.
That's crucial information, Mike. Thank you. Detective Johnson, has there been any increase in weather-related crime or emergencies that people should be aware of?
Unfortunately, Sarah, we do tend to see an uptick in certain types of crime during and after severe weather events. There have been reports of looting in some of the evacuated areas, though thankfully these incidents have been limited. We're also on high alert for potential scams. Unscrupulous individuals sometimes try to take advantage of people's generosity during times like these by posing as charity organizations.
That's excellent advice, Detective. Thank you. Now, as we start to wrap up our show, I'd like to remind our listeners of some key points.
Absolutely, Sarah. While the worst of the storm has passed, we're not out of the woods yet. Flash flooding can occur with little warning, so please stay alert, especially if you live near waterways. And remember, never try to drive through flooded roads. Turn around. Don't drown.
Excellent reminders. Mike, Detective Johnson, any closing advice from a law enforcement perspective?
I'd just like to echo what's been said about being cautious and looking out for one another. In times like these, community spirit really shines through. But also, be aware of your surroundings and report any suspicious activity to local authorities.
Thank you both. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in to the Southwest Virginia Weekly Roundup. We'll be back next week with more news and updates from our region. Until then, stay safe and take care of each other.